Beside me, there's quite a peculiar picture. Now, this picture, just for some context, is called the Nazi book burning. So basically, during the rise of fascism in Germany around the 1930s, the Nazis began to burn a significant number of books that had opposing ideologies or just from Jewish writers in general. Now, this is what we call an extreme case of censorship, and that is the main theme of Fahrenheit 451, which is the book I'd like to introduce to you today. But before we get into more of the details, I'd just like to run through on who the author of this book is. So the man who wrote Fahrenheit 451 is Ray Bradbury, which is this gentleman right here. Now, this guy is a revered American writer who has some of his best works published during the mid-20th century. This is the case because, little known fact, Mr. Bradbury here had a severely impaired vision, so he wasn't able to enlist in the Second World War and instead began his writing career at around 1943. During said career, he mainly wrote horror and fantasy books, and this includes Fahrenheit 451, which is likely his most famous work. In fact, it won the Prometheus Award as a classic science fiction novel and has been translated to more than 100 languages. But he also wrote books like, for example, The Martian Chronicles and The Illustrated Man. So now that we know some of the details about, some of the brief details about the man who wrote Fahrenheit 451, I'd just like to run through the plot of this book a bit, or at least introduce you to it. So our main protagonist is a man named Guy Montag, who is a fireman. But his job is not to put out fire like you think. No, his job is to spray kerosene and burn all books and anything which accommodates them. Their routine is based on the author whose book they'll burn that day. It goes like this: Monday burn Millay, Wednesday Whitman, Friday Faulkner. Now, this schedule continues for years until Guy meets his new neighbor Clarice, who is quite a strange mindset compared to other people. Their conversation introduces Montag to an older world, which ironically is quite similar to our modern world, where people don't fear books like a plague and when they aren't completely absorbed by technology. Now, throughout the plot, there are points of it that shows how Montag wrestles with two opposing ideologies, one which he learns from Clarice, and the other is his old ideas as a fireman. We have to understand that in Montag's society, the government controls the massive population via the mass media machine. Using mindless television programs, they provide instant gratification for people like Guy's wife Mildred, and ultimately nobody cares about anything or anyone except for themselves. So much so that some people are indifferent to whether their loved ones would die in an ongoing war. And lastly, the government has a department specialized in destroying all books and anything that stimulates thinking. That's Montag's department right there. And the idea is that if people can't really think critically, they won't be able to stop what the government would do next. But unfortunately, most people are just like the government would like think. They're just too comfortable with the entertainment and content that are always nearby. And as such, they can't be bothered to think about different opinions or even the flaws of their society. So, but of course, you look at the other way, there's some people that do understand the reality of their society, like Montag's boss Beatty, which is this fellow right here, but perhaps due to fear or blind loyalty that they become detached from humanity as well. Now, the eerie aspect of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is that when you take it apart, it's not really an exaggerated novel anymore, but it's more of a cautionary tale. Because the author wrote the book during the 1950s, during the midst of the Cold War, and if you know, the United States didn't like the Soviets very much back then. So during that time, there's a lot of heavy investigation and censorship, and this was against authors suspected as communist sympathizers. And Ray Bradbury feared how these contemporary censorships could lead to events similar to that of the burning of the Alexandria Library, hence the theme of book burning. Now, consequently, he wrote Fahrenheit 451 as what the future would be like if things did continue the way it did in the 1950s, hence the darker tone of the book. Now, until this day, the book still has disturbing similarities to our modern world. For instance, it often mentions devices resembling seashells, which Mildred uses to listen to her TV shows, and this is basically the prediction for earbuds. It also mentions how entertainment and content is gradually becoming quicker and in shorter forms, and, well, you can see right here, it is quite similar. So this often makes us wonder if there's a possibility that perhaps our world will transition to the one in Fahrenheit 451. But besides from that, that's all from me from today. Thank you everyone for listening.